All right, Scotty Stiles is in the house, bringing the pain today, or bringing the solutions for the pain. And I first reached out to Scotty. We were chatting back and forth, and I wanted to get him on because I have so many friends and family members and people that I've come in contact with that are dealing with pain, and I certainly understand emotional pain, how to work with that. And the more I dive into Scotty's story, it seems like emotional pain and physical pain are very similar. And I'm really excited to dive into his story and to understand what helped him and how he was able to not just manage, but overcome physical pain. So, Scotty, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Mitch. It's great to finally join you here, and I'm a huge fan of your work and listening to your podcast. So it's a honor to be featured today. And yeah, we've already been chatting offline ahead of time, and we've got so many different turns that we can go down, different roads and paths that are super inspiring, and hopefully people get a lot out of our conversation today.
Amen, brother. And I totally agree. It's really cool to see the similarities, and I think we're going to give people a lot of hope and tools if they're dealing with pain, if they're dealing with emotional or physical pain. And I guess let's start with awareness, where we all start. Like, when did you start to notice pain was an issue for you?
Yeah. You know, Today, sitting here now, I'm thinking like, wow, how did I get here? And how is it that I'm all of a sudden helping other people with this I'm a mind body coach, trained in pain reprocessing therapy. I like to say I'm a pain elimination coach because just
Yeah.
like you said, it's not about managing symptoms. We can actually eliminate chronic pain,
Say
which,
it again. Say it
sounds
again for the
too good to be
listeners.
true, but yeah, we can eliminate chronic pain. It's absolutely possible, right? Chronic pain that is neuroplastic, and we can get into the definitions of all this stuff, but most chronic pain is going to be neuroplastic for people. So yeah, so now I'm a pain elimination coach and mind body practitioner, and I help my clients online, and we use psychotherapeutic techniques and emotional processing and understanding brain science, neuroscience, that we can train the parts of the brain and through neuroplasticity to turn off those neural circuits that are causing the pain without having to manipulate the body, without having to take medication or surgery, all those sorts of things. So how did I get here? I mean, it's hard to remember, when the pain started. I think I always had some level of anxiety growing up, which is just another, synonym for pain. They're kind of one and the same, which we can unpack, of course. But, I love to talk about sort of this first moment in time when I did experience a very sharp pain that just woke me up. And it can kind of illuminate some things in hindsight as to why that might have happened.
Mhm.
And so when I was a teenager, I'm a musician. You can see there's a piano behind me. So I was doing this very intense performance, or at least it was very intense building up to it, and it felt like the stakes were very high. And I was playing the piano, and my friend was singing, and it was a very big thing, and we wanted to be perfect and great, and there was a lot of pressure and all of these things. And so we successfully finished the performance, and then afterward, standing in the parking lot with her, my friend, and then our moms, we we're just standing there having a regular conversation, and all of a sudden I get this jolt to the back, and it just kind of caught me totally off guard. And I'm thinking, what the heck is that? I'm not even doing anything. I'm just standing here in this parking lot. And so, you know, at the age of 17, you might be thinking, oh, I'm getting some back pain because I'm getting older. Well, isn't that an interesting sort of reflection to make? You're 17 years old. Why would you be getting it? But it's because that's what I was conditioned to believe. I see people all around in society that, they have pain. It's kind of normalized in society, right? Oh, you're supposed to have back pain. So I kind of chalked it up to that. I just kind of thought, oh, well, maybe I'm getting older. My grandmother growing up, uh, she had, I witnessed her growing up having so much pain. She'd have to kind of sit on a stool, and she would kind of flinch and make sounds every time she bent over.
Mm.
Now, she's no longer with us, but I would speculate that she had a lot of neuroplastic pain and symptoms, a lot of chronic pain that was not actually structurally caused, even though it was very physically felt in the body.
Mhm.
And so, our beliefs affect everything. And so if I were to believe, oh, I have my grandmother's bad back or these genetics, that will hold true in my body, and my brain and nervous system will create that exact neural pathway. If I'm believing that I'm broken, we can get into the neuroscience of why that is. But so that's kind of where it started. And now in hindsight, I'm thinking, oh, well, it was probably because in that moment, standing with my friend and our parents, that my brain was now scanning for the next possible threat and the next danger. And probably on some sort of subconscious level, the pain came in to protect me because maybe I was fearful of the next big performance, or this sort of like, what is next? This looming sort of pressure of, and so that was when the pain tried to come and save me.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's so interesting and I'm sure it takes a lot to be able to go from I've got my grandmother's bad back or I've got genetics that's in my family to this is a neuroplastic pain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It seems like going against gravity.
Oh, yeah, huge. And it took probably 15 more years with all of the other pains that kind of continued to get to that place. But if we just think about it like logically and scientifically, like I'm standing in a parking lot, not doing anything structurally other than standing on my 2 feet, which I've always done. So why in that moment in time would I get all of a sudden like a jolt of pain like that, like a spasm where somebody in society, we would say, oh, my back went out, right? But anatomically speaking, backs don't go out.
Yeah,
That's not.
that don't go out when we're not doing anything.
Yeah,
And I'm sure that's got to be scary as hell to have done that. I mean, if it would make sense, more sense. It makes sense hearing it now, but it would make more sense if you hurt yourself in the performance.
true. Yeah. If somehow I sort of like fell off the piano bench, or something came and knocked me in the back. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even it's interesting that we're talking on this subject too of during the performance, I would get a lot of back pain while I was rehearsing.
Oh,
And I would just think, oh, it's because I'm sitting on a piano bench with a unsupported chair for 2 hours. But now looking back, I can see, oh, it was the amount of pressure. Emotional pressure can cause real physical pain in the body. It's a stress response. And so it's the amount of pressure I was putting on myself to literally perfect every single note that I was playing. And so that kind of emotional pressure, when it puts the brain on high alert, and when there's enough sort of emotional danger felt in the nervous system, the body then comes in and tries to save us with physical pain. And that can just be a learned neural circuit. So, if you've experienced pain sitting on a piano bench, your brain remembers that, right? We have these parts of the brain that are associated with memory and learning. And that's what causes neuroplastic symptoms, because it's just a habit that the brain has learned. It says, oh, I'm used to having pain at this certain point of time. I'm sitting on the piano bench, I get pain here. So then we expect it. And that becomes what we know as predictive processing, predictive coding, where we say, well, every time I do this, I get pain. It's like learning a bike. And so a lot of the work that I do with my clients is we unlearn that process. We actually teach the brain that, wait a minute, it's not the sitting on the piano bench that's causing the pain, even though that is what I'm doing at the time, but that's just a conditioned response. So I'm going to train my brain to sit on this piano bench. I'm allowing the pain to come up. Allowing is a big thing that we say, and as practitioners, and I'm going to not buy into the fear. Right. I'm not going to buy into this story or narrative that it's being structurally caused. I'm going to change my response to the sensations that are coming up in my back as I'm sitting here playing the piano, and try to regulate out of that response, or be with that response with some compassion, and we can change that neural pathway, and it can turn off when we sort of change our relationship to it.
yeah. I just get this image that I had going through as I'm still going through working through fear and anxiety and that kind of thing. And I imagine it's so similar for pain. It's like I'm gonna sit here and be in this fire and know and teach my body that I'm safe, that I'm not actually getting burnt, that the flame actually can't hurt
Yeah. Oh, and it's so counterintuitive. Why would we ever think that we could do that? And especially when it brings up so much anxiety. And then I think that's kind of the other big part of my story, is that they're one and the same. So like I was saying, even though I felt that back pain at that moment in time, I was probably having anxiety before that, and all the anxiety around that performance was probably what was sensitizing my nervous system. And so I think I always, from early on, had a lot of anxiety, dealt with a lot of feelings of shame around who I was and my sexuality and growing up and needing to hide my sexuality. And so that, inevitably you end up having sort of a fear-based thinking, or a dysfunctional relationship to fear. So it was kind of like, I need to repress who I am. I can't acknowledge that. And that is just really telling the brain that there's a threat, there's a danger. And then I'm experiencing, pain, and I'm like, oh, I can't feel that. Or I'm feeling anxiety. No, I can't feel that. And the more we don't want to feel those things, the louder that volume gets, because the brain is just trying to protect us. So
Yeah.
the anxiety was always there. And this is so common for people. I mean, it's the human condition to feel anxiety. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, which I had to learn later on. It's just trying to protect you. Anxiety is a danger signal, just like pain is. And not all pain is structurally caused, and the anxiety can be just a learned neural circuit, just like the pain. And so we tend to have a lot of anxiety when we have certain personality traits, where we're putting pressure on ourselves, we're trying to be good people, we're perfectionists, we have high standards for ourselves, we want to succeed, but it comes at a cost sometimes. And all that pressure that we put on ourselves can dysregulate the nervous system, sensitization, and then cause physical symptoms. So yeah, the anxiety is a big part of my story. And later on into my 20s and 30s, I would have more sort of these acute flare-ups of pain. Now, they were acute in the sense that they were maybe hanging around for 2 or 3 days, and then I would get better. So I never really identified as a person having chronic pain. But then eventually, into my 30s, I was having it every day. And, I would have back pain, and I would have hip pain, and sometimes shoulder pain. And again, I was just kind of repressing the fact that it was going on for me. It just felt very normal. I thought, oh, well, everybody gets pain, right? It's just, we hear about that in society. Oh, you work too long on your feet, or, you slept the wrong way. All of these things that are myths, they're pain myths in our society. How is it that you slept the wrong way? You've slept the same way every night of your life. And then one day we wake up and we say, my shoulder hurts because I slept the wrong way. I mean, were you aware of what you were doing when you were sleeping? No, that's not really a thing. We're not getting hit by a truck when we're sleeping. You could sleep in any way you want. Just putting that out there for people.
Yeah. And
so,
sorry, I didn't even cut you off. Keep going.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, it's just, I did what anybody would do in those moments. It's just, okay, I have some pain. I got to be off my feet and rest, take a few days off work. And that was just kind of the merry-go-round I was on in that time of my life before it got really, really bad.
That makes so much sense. And I appreciate you sharing that, man. It seems like the perfect storm of trauma, call it sensitization, chronic symptoms, is this hypervigilance, this fear, this anxiety that starts at an early age, a suppression, and then a pressure that we put on ourselves to perform perfectly, or whatever our adaptive response is to get love. It seems like that's kind of the perfect storm of creating, whether you call it neuroplastic symptoms or trauma or dysregulation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, you just summed it up perfectly. That's exactly what was going on underneath the surface, that I wasn't aware of consciously. As we talk about it now, we can say, oh, we're looking at this person and what was going on psychologically and emotionally for them. That's exactly what the cause of the pain was. As there's nothing that we can point to that was structurally causing the pain. Well, here's the thing though. I went to go get an MRI. I went down that rabbit hole. And sure enough, we will find something on our MRIs. Everybody has normal abnormalities. This is what Dr. Sarno, he's this famous physiatrist. He passed away maybe 10 years ago or so, less than 10 years. But he would see people and say, hey, the pain is not coming from the structures of your body. It's coming from your repressed emotional world, these emotional threats that are putting your brain on high alert, such as putting pressure on yourself or not being able to be your authentic self. And even just believing that your body is broken is enough to cause physical pain in the body.
Yeah, that
And
was
that's,
me.
yeah, and that's what I did. I had an MRI that said, this is in 2015, that said I had bulging discs, spinal stenosis, femoral narrowing, and mild arthritis. Um, and and so this is what a surgeon is looking for. Now, a surgeon is, they're trained in what they're trained in. They're trained to look for these sort of abnormalities. And then they would say, well, that's where the pain's coming from. But it's just a correlation. It's not a causation. And if we do a scan of 100 people on the street, there's studies that show this, that the majority of people out there walking around with no pain also have the same MRI findings. So how can we say that it was being caused by the bulging discs and all of these things? I mean, I'm sitting here today, my spine is absolutely no different, and I don't have any back or hip pain like I did 10 years ago. And I'm like much older now. And so if aging was the cause of pain, we've totally debunked that, because it's not that my spine is going to somehow regenerate and look any better. I'm sure if I did an MRI today, it would look just as jacked up as it did when I was in my early 30s, thinking I was getting too old. Can you
Oh
imagine?
yeah, and I'm sure you were super relieved to see, oh, there is something wrong. See, I told you.
Uh-huh. Exactly. Yeah. And so then I clung to the MRI saying, oh, well, now I have a reason for it. Now, this is what's causing it. And that didn't actually help. Most people will find that when they get an MRI result, their pain will increase, because now they have higher fear levels.
Okay.
And that fits perfectly with this idea of the pain being caused by a perception of danger. So a perception of danger is an emotional threat that heightens your sensitivity in your nervous system. And then that causes that danger signal, which is pain or anxiety. And so if I'm believing my body is broken, well, I'm going to feel that physical sensation. So the famous neuroscience study that's talked about in this realm of physical pain that's not structurally caused is the story of a construction worker, and he steps on a nail, and a nail goes through his boot, what seems to be, through his foot. And he's rushed to hospital in excruciating pain. They give him all this medication. They have to cut the boot off in order to not injure him further. And then when they remove the boot from his foot, they see that the nail didn't actually puncture his foot. It just went between his toes. But because he believed so strongly that he was physically injured, through predictive coding, the brain created pain to try to protect him. So this belief, this sort of perception of danger that he was injured, created that real physical pain to protect him. And we want that. We want our brain to protect us from something that could be a threat. And so sometimes the brain, it makes guesses, and it makes mistakes or things like that. So if I'm experiencing some physical back pain and then I'm told by a surgeon, hey, it's being caused by all these gnarly things in your spine, now I'm picturing all of this stuff like, oh, every time I bend, I feel these pinching nerves and squeezing the discs and the bulging and all that language that they use. Even talking about it now, I feel like my body is kind of tensing up, right? Everything we think and believe is played out on the stage of our body. Our body is always listening to our mind. And so I love to sort of say this quote. It's from Dr. Schubiner, Dr. Howard Schubiner. He's, followed in Dr. Sarno's footsteps. He would say, belief in harm leads to harm. So, if you're believing that your body is injured, you will feel that physical pain, just like the guy who stepped on the nail that didn't actually go through his foot, went between his toes. So therefore the counter argument to that then is, well, then belief in well-being leads to well-being. And that is kind of sort of how we boil down mind-body medicine, is saying we just believe that we are okay. And that can be enough to heal the physical body. When we see that there is nothing that we need to do, there's nothing that we need to fix in the body. We just have to have this confidence and belief that we're okay. And when we do that, we're actually lowering fear and sensitization, because we're believing in our own ability to heal. Sounds too good to be true, but we've got the neuroscience studies to back it up.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the quote. What is it? Whether you believe it is true or not, you're correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I imagine as you're sharing that, especially the part about seeing an MRI and getting more symptoms, more fear, more anxiety, more pain. I imagine it's also a period of accepting that, hey, you're okay, and it's in your brain, it's in your nervous system. Because I can see myself going to, well, then I'm crazy, and then I don't know how to work with this, and I think that's where probably education comes in and is so important.
Yeah.
What's that
Yeah.
like to hear that? Like it's in your brain, it's in your nervous system.
Right. When you first hear this conversation about the brain, it it can lose a lot of people. And people will often think, "Oh, are you saying the pain is in my head?" And in fact, our brain has to process everything. If you were to break your arm, you still need your brain in order to feel that pain.
Mhm.
Whether it's a structural injury like a broken arm, or, you could have that same sensation of pain in your arm without breaking your arm, as exemplified by that study of the guy who stepped on the nail. You can have real, really excruciating physical pain in your arm that's created by a perception of danger, trauma, emotional stress, repressed emotions, learned neural circuits can all be that same cause of that pain. So it doesn't mean we're saying it's in your head. We're just saying that all pain is constructed by the brain. It's always has to be interpreted. Whether you put your hand on a hot stove, that signal, that heat has to come through your hand up the nerve fibers to your brain, and your brain has to make a decision in like a nanosecond whether or not to send that pain. And so it's reflexive and it's good, and we need that in order to pull our hand away. And the same is true for emotional pain. The pain is coming on to tell us, hey, there's something going on in your life that you're not tending to. And the subconscious mind is very clever. It's a million times more powerful than our conscious mind, and it's just trying to come in and save us. So if you're, in a job that you're not satisfied with, or you're in an abusive relationship, or dealing with a narcissist, or you are putting a lot of pressure on yourself, or criticizing yourself, or worrying, you have all of these unmet needs, or you don't set boundaries and you give everything to other people, and you're people pleasing. Well, there is a part of your subconscious mind that feels very threatened, and physical pain will come in to try to save you, just like putting your hand over a hot stove. So we're not saying the pain's in your head, you're not imagining it. This type of pain is actually more excruciating than any other type of pain known to medicine, is what Dr. Sarno would say as well. And
Were there
yeah, so
were there things that like I feel that in my body, and I've heard friends describe how bad pain can be, and it's hard to wrap your head around that. Um, so you hear that it's in the nervous system, it's created from past conditioning. You've got all these unmet needs and emotions that you've never expressed, and you're repressing yourself, and that to me is like a perfect storm. It's like the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once is kind of what I hear. And so if somebody is kind of sitting in your shoes and maybe they're in this place where they're like, maybe it's not physical, maybe it is neuroplastic, then how do you go about working with that? What's the next step?
mm,
And oh, here's another thing I want to ask too. Maybe it'll
yeah.
help with that. Were there how how did it what was it like letting go of like the physical stuff and moving into that? Because I've heard some of your story and it feels like it was a journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good segue, because I didn't get there overnight.
Mhm.
Um, I first discovered Dr. Sarno's book. He's got a couple books that are very popular. One's called Healing Back Pain. The other one's called The Mindbody Prescription. So I always recommend to people, if you're going to do anything, the first thing you should do is um, seek out the book, The Mindbody Prescription. That's a really good place to start. So in 2015, I find this information, and I read it and I'm receptive to it. But, a lot of people will say in this community, I threw the book against the wall. I thought that is hogwash, bogus. I don't believe it. And I think, that's kind of what happened to me. A little more gradual. I didn't literally throw the book across the room, but over time, over 3 or 4 days, that, that the belief system of thinking that there was something wrong with me because I had that MRI, and I felt that validated things and justified things for
Oh,
me.
you're just clinging to that MRI. But look.
Exactly. And I remember explaining it to a roommate at the time, that I discovered this guy, Dr. Sarno, and I thought it was really interesting that, emotional pain and stress, and it can cause real physical symptoms. And I mean, of course, why would we deny that, by the way? You feel shame, your face turns red. That's a physiological symptom. You feel, all sorts of things. You cry and water falls out of your face. Like, we feel emotions or stress in the body and we get things, right? You get your heart rate, like stuff happens physiologically. So it's just the same thing, but this chronic pain can linger longer even though the genesis was not structurally caused. Anyway, so I'm talking to this roommate of mine, and she just kind of says to me, once I explain Dr. Sarno's theories, that the pain, it can go away and it's not really structurally caused. And that's a great thing because it kind of sounds like, well, it's not a problem. But her interpretation of that was, oh, so the pain's just in your head? Oh, so and I thought, well, no, but there is something wrong with me. Like, this is worse than that, right? It kind of sounds dismissive when you're saying, oh, just deal with it, this brain thing. But no, we want to validate the pain is very real. It's very intense. But I felt in that moment, oh, I needed more validation. Like, that's unfair that she was saying this to me. And so I said, started to cling to that MRI again. Like you're saying, I was like clutching at it, being like, well, I have these bulging discs and this is the reason. And so for 2 more years, I continued to do the same thing that was not helping me. Einstein says insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And so I went to, oh goodness, I tried everything. I tried chiropractic, physio, osteo, massage, acupuncture. Um, I was hanging from trees. I was just grab a tree branch and hang, thinking like, oh, that's going to loosen something up, and maybe in that moment I could kind of feel this expansion, but that wasn't doing anything. The surgeon that I saw, so they said that I was not a candidate for surgery, and they sent me to a sports medicine clinic. And oh boy, he had horrible bedside manner, which upped my fear levels, and that increased the pain. I had cortisone shots. I went to the sports medicine clinic where they had me do sort of these different postures where you would sort of stand on your feet in a particular way, 40% on the balls of your feet and 60% on and all of this manipulation of the physical body, which did nothing for me. It's interesting too, though, because sometimes would be stops along the way where I would find a little bit of relief. And then I would think, oh, this is the thing. This is the golden ticket. This person recommended this, osteopath that is so well known. And now what we know about mind body medicine is that, the underlying mechanism that turns that neural circuit of pain off is the belief that you're okay, and the belief that this treatment is working for you. So if my brain somehow was able to turn off that pain after, a really successful, in quotes, successful osteopath treatment, it's not because the treatment worked. It's because of my belief that the treatment would work. That is the placebo, the belief in well-being leading to your well-being. So mind body medicine is actually, you're cutting out the middleman here, and you're saying, I don't need anything outside of myself to structurally manipulate my body in order to physically heal. I can just believe. Belief alone is enough to heal. Because, that osteopath treatment, it's a placebo, but not the kind that we want, because it's not long lasting. Because then a couple of weeks later, the pain starts to come in again. Because if we're fundamentally believing that the body is damaged, just like the guy with the nail in the boot, we're still going to experience that physical pain. If I'm picturing my spine being cracked and bulging and all this stuff, I'm still going to experience that excruciating pain to sort of match my belief system. And so finally in 2017, I took a trip to Europe, and I was really trying to enjoy myself. I found that in those days I could go on a vacation and somehow feel better, which, interestingly enough, that is another phenomenon called the vacation effect. You go away, you leave your sort of regular life, your typical stressors, and all of a sudden the pain just vanishes. Well, what more proves that there is some sort of psychological, emotional factor than that? You remove stress from your life and you put yourself in this happy situation. But anyway, on this vacation, I was just more dysregulated, and in fact, I was wanting that sort of vacation effect. I was hoping and really not wanting the pain to be there, and that desire was so strong that, of course, the pain increased. What we focus on grows and expands through neuroplasticity, right? And so I was just, I didn't know about mind body medicine very fully at this point, but that vacation really sealed the deal. I knew that I had to try something different, and real change can sometimes be born out of desperation.
Oh,
So yeah. So once I got home, I didn't know what was coming, but I went to a used bookstore here in Toronto, and I saw Dr. Sarno's book on the shelf, and that was the moment. That was the moment I said, okay, I'm doing this again, because I've exhausted everything. I've tried literally everything short of surgery. And so I took the book out and I read it in a week. And within a week, my back pain was gone. Now it came back because this is how symptoms work. But that is also enough to know if I could read a book and it was making my brain feel safe, understanding psychoeducation and the fact that the brain can cause real physical pain in the absence of tissue damage, then what more evidence do I need? And so that was when I just, it took off, and I knew that this would be the path, even though I wasn't always fully there, and it took a long time to fully get there. But
what was it in that book that first week that you think turned off the pain?
Yeah, a lot of the neuroscience, right? So psychoeducation is the first step to pain reprocessing therapy, which is the term that we talk about now that's built off of Dr. Sarno's work. But it's this understanding that your body is structurally okay. Just knowing your spine has all of the same abnormalities that other people with no pain have. And even a good physiotherapist will tell you the same thing. They'll say, okay, yeah, you can move your body. It's safe to move your body. And they'll say things like motion is lotion. If you were truly injured, they wouldn't be telling you that. And physiotherapy is great for rehabilitation of a serious injury, car accident, stroke, that sort of thing. But it doesn't do a very good job of chronic pain. And this is what's kind of missing. The medical model is so biomedical focused on, treating the body as if it's a car, but we are so much more complex. We've got our psychology and our emotions and the physical parts of the body and our spiritual sense of selves. And so when we look at it at a holistic perspective, it kind of makes a lot of sense why this pain can be happening when it's not structurally caused. So yeah, the message of safety that my brain received from the book was enough to sort of set the stage and to sort of turn off that neural circuit. And it happens like a light switch for people.
Yeah.
Right? The pain can turn on and off just like that. And it's wild. I mean, sometimes that's how it begins. It kind of just sort of seemingly comes out of nowhere, or it kind of sort of builds over time as well. But when it goes away, it's like it's when you least expect it. And so the pain went away.
It was like
immediately.
I said it kind of feels like a magic trick.
Really does. Yeah. Yeah. I felt like, because I'd been in the pain for 2 years or 3, like every day, obviously I had decades of pain, but on an everyday basis, I had it all the time. I wasn't working. I was literally lying on the floor. I couldn't sit on couches. I never traveled. I had to lie on a yoga mat on the floor all day long. And I was constantly massaging and icing. And then all of a sudden, when it's gone into your body, you almost kind of think, whoa, am I dreaming? Like that's like a magic trick. It doesn't seem real. And then, right when the pain went away, I got this new symptom. And I didn't know much about what was happening from this sort of neurophysiological point of view, but I was experiencing what is known as this phenomenon called the symptom imperative. And this is what Dr. Sarno would talk about, is that when one symptom goes away, the brain will now try to protect us in another part of the body.
If that still feels unsafe, is that what's going on?
It's exactly. It's still the subconscious root is still not fully realized. And so I got this really excruciating dry eye, almost like I thought there was something in it. And I'm thinking, did I scratch my eye in my sleep? Did something fly in my eye? What have I done? All the while kind of still being aware of the symptom imperative, but it's the sensations that we feel with pain or different symptoms that come up. It's not just pain-related symptoms. They seem so real enough to think that we need to do something, right? They drive us to feel like we need to go to the hospital, which I did many times on my journey, things like that. But we have to kind of decipher, and sure, it's good to rule things out medically. So that's what I did. Even though in the back of my mind, I thought, well, this is strange. My back pain went away. I'm experiencing what feels like I have a boulder in my eye. I felt like my vision had even changed. So I thought, okay, why don't I go to the optometrist? Hadn't been in years. We're supposed to go more often than, or at least I'm supposed to go more often than I had been. And sure enough, there was nothing wrong with my eye. They look for, an optometrist will look for different sort of eye diseases, things like that. And I said to the optometrist, on my vision, I feel like I can't see as well though. And sure enough, I need some glasses. Like I got some glasses because my vision had changed. But what's interesting is that, again, the brain perceives everything. And so the perception that my vision had changed almost seemed like it had happened overnight, but really it had just happened gradually. But because I was so hyper focused on my eye having a problem, then I thought, oh, now there's something wrong with my vision. But I had never noticed it. That wasn't in my conscious awareness until I was starting to have some eye symptoms. So turns out I had some glasses, but it was just for astigmatism that was watching TV and driving, the glasses would help for, but there was no actual real eye damage. But the sensitization was creating this very real physical symptom in the eye. And so I would have years beyond yeah. And so many other symptoms are symptom imperatives that would come along on my journey too. Which is what happens. It's just how the brain wants to communicate to us.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because it feels like that's what I'm seeing from myself going through this process of coming out of sensitization and helping clients as well. There's like an initial burst of relief. And I'm also aware I've never heard of the symptom imperative, but I've seen like, okay, so I'm sleeping better. Maybe the fatigue that I was experiencing is better, but now I'm obsessed about something new, whether it's like food or supplements or diet, whatever it may be. And with the education, you're able to catch, oh, this is the same thing. And ultimately, it's going back to meeting the fear, the root cause of our fear in our body. And so I can imagine, and I know for sure, and I've seen with my clients too, that when we have a big breakthrough, if you will, especially if we've been dealing this for years, it's easy to think like, oh, I'm done, I'm healed. And when that rubber band, when we go back into another contraction of the nervous system, um, the despair that can come up, like, what's it like to feel like we're going backwards, and how do you work through that?
Yeah, that's a really important thing to point out. And, I love to say healing is not linear. And, if all of a sudden your back and hip pain are better and you get a new symptom in the body, well, that's the brain doing what it knows best to protect you. Because if your back and hip pain is not going to scare you anymore, your brain is very crafty. Our brain's not out to get us, but it is protective. So if we've kind of dealt with that back and hip pain and we've reprocessed that using, different mind body techniques, well, very cleverly, the brain could now send you some shoulder pain, and that might feel more terrifying to you. And so that's just kind of what happens. It's like whack-a-mole through the body. This is the symptom imperative. So, you know, um, it just finds a new crafty way to get your attention. And if it's something you've never experienced before, you're going to feel more uniquely terrified by it.
Yeah.
I've had some of the strangest symptoms since then. I had one of the most recent ones was I was traveling in Vancouver, and I had this very strange mouth sensation. And, it started off as almost like jaw pain. And then I felt like I was sucking on like a sour candy. So the brain can create literally any physical sensation or symptom in the body. So, if the body has the mechanism for, housing a symptom, the brain can be co-opted to be that root cause, the subconscious mind and brain and nervous system. If the body has the ability to express it, the brain can be the source of it.
So it's interesting to hear too that it sounds like you built so much awareness and you've worked through this stuff, and still stuff can pop up. And it's
Yeah.
and is it basically the same tools that got you out of the sensitization that get you out of like a little small flare these days? You're like, oh, maybe I need to slow down. Maybe I'm putting pressure on myself. Maybe there's an emotion that I'm not feeling. What's your process for when something new pops up? Because I feel like it's so easy to go, oh my God, I'm going backwards, and to resensitize ourselves. How do we pull ourselves out of that?
So true. And it's like learning to master anything. It's like learning to master an instrument. Um, and to not get discouraged. And I hope that listeners aren't thinking like, oh, he's a chronic pain coach and he still gets symptoms. Well, actually, yeah, we again all have a brain and nervous system that is built to survive through all of these centuries, to protect us with pain when we need it, whether it is putting your hand on a hot stove and needing to pull it off, or something emotionally and stressful going on. So it's kind of a barometer of understanding that maybe there's something in our life that we need to tend to. So my pain, if I do get a certain sort of twinge or something like that, or a new symptom, it never becomes chronic, because again, a chronic pain, as one of my mentors, Nicole Sachs, says, it's an epidemic of fear and meaning. And so as long as you're not, adding more gasoline to the fire, which is fear and meaning, then it won't become chronic. And so just seeing it, just like you said, as a barometer for, maybe there's some stress, or I'm putting pressure on myself, or all these things. It's getting my attention. Okay, so what is it that I need to deal with in my life emotionally? And then I can start to see this sort of any symptom or new sensation as an indication, sort of as like a superpower. Oh, I feel a twinge. That means there's something going on. I'm feeling unsafe emotionally or psychologically. And okay, I can kind of realize that I can express myself in this way, and feel more confident. And it's really kind of a language, a nervous system language that we build. So chronic pain, it's not meant to be around forever, and we can absolutely unlearn it. But can we remove the human condition? No, and nor do we need to. So it's okay to get things here and there. I sometimes will have a call with a client, and they'll have a particular symptom, and we could do different mindfulness exercises. One of the biggest ones that we do is somatic tracking. And we could be doing an exercise where we're allowing, right? We're leaning into the physical sensations of the body to teach the brain that those sensations are not dangerous. And this is, how we change our relationship to the symptoms in pain reprocessing therapy. And we'll be doing this practice, and let's just say the client has pelvic pain, and we're paying attention to the pelvis, and they're paying attention to their sensations, and I'm guiding them through this practice. And now, of course, as we're working through the practice, I'm paying attention to my own pelvic area. And now I'm starting to feel, oh, how does my pelvis feel? And then even doing this right now, I wasn't paying attention to my pelvic area, but now I am. And is it actually feeling tight? And is it doing anything? And if I start to label that area as wrong or dangerous, or, I feel some tension, and maybe I have a disease, and maybe I have a bladder infection, guess what happens? Belief in harm leads to harm. And I'm going to start feeling more somatic sensations. And if I have a perception of threat or danger, believing that I'm injured, it's going to increase. So what do I do when I experience this with a client? I might even express that to them. I might even say, hey, look, symptoms are contagious, not on a pathological level, but on this sort of suggestibility level. This is how I learned pain from my grandmother, right? I was so suggestible of not wanting that sensation that it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'll explain to my client, I'll say, I'm even feeling physical sensations in my pelvic area, and really normalize that and say, that's just human. We're human beings. You can feel anything in any part of the body if you put your mind in that location. But it's how we label it. It's like, are we labeling that with fear and meaning? Are we picturing it there being something wrong? And as soon as we do that, then that neural circuit gets learned, right? It's the parts of the brain associated with memory and learning, and it holds, and it creates, through neuroplasticity, a neural circuit for pain. And that's what locks it on. That's what keeps it chronic.
I love you laying that out, and I want to highlight, hey, yeah, we got a chronic pain coach here that helps people eliminate pain, and he gets pain too. And the difference that I hear is that you're no longer stuck, that you can trust that what goes up must come down. And I can certainly relate to this on the more emotional level, and dealing with anxiety and fatigue and things like that, burnout, and eventually seeing how quick this process can be, and how much attaching that secondary fear keeps us stuck, and also trying to figure it out and fix it. I want to go there next.
Yeah.
But for me, it was so interesting to get a process kind of like you did, and to actually stay with the pain, and to see, yes, it's going to increase, it's going to get louder, it's going to be scary, but if I can stay with it and trust and love the shit out of it, then all of a sudden the magic trick happens, and I come out of it, and it's like, so you're telling me for all these years I was resistant to moving through this, and that's a big part of what caused all this emotional backup and fear causing this pain. And if I can just sit with it and love myself and teach myself that it's okay, that eventually it goes away, like that sounds nutty.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, the bedrock of this work is feeling safe with sensations. That's kind of like the first level. And that's exactly what you're saying now. It's like, sit with that sensation. Don't add any more fear to that fear or meaning, because that's like the gasoline to the fire that's kind of already going. And if you're sitting with that sensation with compassion and knowing that you'll be well, and knowing that, if we sit long enough, without that resistance, the brain will get the message that there is no threat, and it will unlearn that symptom. It's kind of spoken about, in the language of saying, feel it to heal it. So on a somatic level, we would just want to feel that sensation through this lens of neutrality to know that we're not in danger. And, the other parts of this work can be, to be doing the same with our emotions, to be doing, to feeling a sense of safety with our thoughts and not necessarily buying into those fear thoughts. And then our behaviors and movements. So even though you might have physical pain, walking is going to teach your brain behaviorally that walking is safe, that you're not damaged. And so the more we can sort of gradually, incorporate more movement into our lives as well. And I work with a lot of athletes that are, they're having setbacks because they're believing that they're injuring themselves. But when we believe the body is damaged, the body will try to protect us with physical pain. So that's a big hurdle. It's just a conditioned response for people. And, an example would be, with my back pain, it would hurt when I bent over. So of course, anyone would think, oh, every time I bend, I'm causing something structural. Okay, so now I learned that the pain was not structurally caused. So why does it still hurt when I bend over if it's not structurally caused? It's because the brain creates physical pain, that's psychologically, emotionally rooted through memory and learning. So your brain has this predictive coding process of saying, every time he bends over, I'm going to send him some shooting pain. And that's just a conditioned response.
Wow.
So, but then I was able to notice, wait, I bent over 9 times out of 10, I had back pain, but there was that one time that I bent over and it didn't happen. So that just totally debunks this idea that the pain is structurally caused. If it was structurally caused, it would hurt every single time. It would be predictable. So I had to look for those prediction errors to see, okay, it's not structurally caused. If I was able to walk, and so we want to start testing our body. So, we want to incorporate movement, feeling safe with movement and behaviors to say, hey, I can go outside. I actually realize, whoa, I actually feel better when I'm walking. Well, that's really strange. Why I'm lying on my floor all day long in excruciating pain, but I feel better when I'm walking? That doesn't add up, right?
Yeah.
And then the last part is just feeling safe with who we are and safe in our lives. There's a lot of things for people that, they can't reach full safety. In the world we live in, there might be some threats in their lives, that are impossible to eliminate, but it's this idea of feeling safe enough, right? We don't need 100% safety, but, so that is kind of the bedrock of it all. And then, but yeah, this on the sensation level, absolutely. We don't want to be resisting. Carl Jung famously says, what we resist persists. And so that just makes perfect sense. If we're focusing on this pain and we don't want it, we're resisting. And what we focus on grows and expands through neuroplasticity. So the opposite to that is to actually embrace to erase. So if what we focus on grows and expands, what we embrace, we erase. And isn't that so counterintuitive, to embrace the pain? Why would anybody want to embrace their pain? But when we do that, we're actually changing our relationship to it. We're embracing it with, you're going to be okay. We're embracing it with that self-talk, that everything is actually fine, this sort of neutrality, that there is nothing structurally wrong. We're allowing that sensation to be there through this lens of safety. And then the brain and nervous system starts to calm, because we're no longer feeding it with those messages of danger. We're just embracing that sensation. We're kind of, getting curious about it and getting familiar with it, to see it for what it is, without attaching any story or meaning to it. Because it's that story of saying I'm broken, or I don't want this, I want this to go away. Saying that actually increases it. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it starts with awareness. We get education. We learn about predictive patterns. We have to go against gravity, against conditioning, against the band-aid the society tells us to put on the boo-boo. And then what I hear is, and something that Simona talked to me about that really hit was, safety is something that's built through repetition. I knew that I needed to build safety, but it's really hard to do that if we've never experienced that before. It's like learning a new language, and with education and awareness, we can start to move towards these things and challenge them. I'd say in a titrated way. And once you see the ball go through the hoop a couple times, and you've got awareness, and it's like, maybe this is something that I've created, and if I can work with the fear and teach my body that it's okay, and I can do that over and over again in different situations, challenge these predictive, what do they call it? Predictive pattern processing, then eventually my brain's going to learn, just like it learned the fear, it can unlearn.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. Shout out to Simona, by the way. She's a
Yeah.
good friend
Thanks,
of
Mona.
Yeah.
I want to go back to, we were talking about this prior to hopping on and prior to hit record. Speaking of Simona, nice little entry point here. She stopped me in my tracks when we had a podcast together, when she said, what keeps us in sensitization is trying to fix it and figure it out. And I'm like, I felt like somebody put a high beam on me, because I was the biohacker. I was the trying to, and if we're in pain, it makes sense. We want to get rid of it, and we want it to get better. We want to figure it out. But you mentioned that there's some other S. So if it's fix it and figure it out, what are some other things that keep us stuck in fear?
Yeah. So one of my mentors, Dr. Howard Schubiner, who again is another pioneer in mind-body medicine, that started his work after Dr. Sarno. So he initially started off creating the 5 Fs, and so F is the first letter of each word, obviously, and then he expanded it to 6, and then I gave him one more, so now it's 7. So they're just different reactions to how we respond to pain or anxiety or other symptoms, symptoms that are resulted in, of sensitization. And so naturally, if you feel something uncomfortable in your body, you're going to feel fear. And so that's the first F, right? You feel fear, that upregulates the nervous system. You have more anxiety. And in pain reprocessing therapy, we talk about it as if it's called a pain-fear cycle. So you feel some fear, and that upregulates the nervous system. Then you feel some pain. And then the more pain you feel, the more fear you feel. And then it just cycles like that. So it's kind of no wonder. We start to think that there's something wrong with us. Everything starts to feel like more of an emergency. And then the pain gets higher, higher, higher. And so we want to isolate the fear, recognize, okay, that's a natural reaction to pain. Of course we feel fear, but we have to it's counterintuitive. We actually have to recognize that and say, okay, that's just how I'm reacting, but now I'm going to choose a new response. And so it's this idea of not buying into the fear. Oftentimes our thoughts are telling us all of these things that aren't true, like the pain will never go away, or maybe I'm injured, or, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Think about how many of those thoughts aren't true, right? We're worried that somebody's giving us a dirty look. Like, there's so many things that we could be telling ourselves, and they're quite often fueled by a negativity bias. And that's just how we're wired. It's not a problem. We always want to look for the negative in order to protect ourselves. So of course you're going to have a fear thought when you're feeling an uncomfortable sensation, but it's what we do with it that matters. So that's the first F, is the fear. The second one is focus.
Okay.
So if you are focusing on something like you don't want it there, it's going to grow and expand through neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together wire together. This is why the term neuroplastic pain is perfect, because neuro, meaning brain generated, and plastic, meaning the ability for it to change through repetition. It's plastic, neuroplasticity. The brain can change at any age. And so when we have this idea of focus, if we're focusing on it with the wrong intention, like we don't want this here, we're really, this desire for it to be gone is this sort of wrong type of focus. It's going to keep through neuroplasticity, it's going to increase. Every time I think about my pain, a lot of people will say, I can't stop thinking about it. It's kind of like OCD, right? You're like, and what it really is, I've heard Alan Gordon, he'll say, this pain that you're feeling in your body is like kinesthetic OCD. It's like thinking about a sensation over and over again loops that sensation.
Mhm.
So we want to try to break that, and we can break that. We can kind of say, oh, I'm focusing on this. That's just my I'm subconsciously focusing on it, or consciously, and that's actually increasing the pain. So if I can notice my part in how much focus and energy I give something and shift my attention and say, ooh, I'm going to try to focus on a movie. I'm going to try to maybe have a little distraction or some avoidance behaviors that can help break that cycle a little bit. And again, that's just another form of fear. It's just another one of the F's.
Mhm.
So the next two are quite similar. We have fighting. If we're trying to push through pain or symptoms, we're getting angry by the symptoms, or we're resisting the symptoms. That type of energy will absolutely upregulate the nervous system. It's just another form of fear. Frustration, we're feeling irritable, we're frustrated, we're getting kind of annoyed by it. If we're buying into that, another day of pain, and I'm so frustrated, I don't want this, again, that desire for things to be different is read by the nervous system as fear. And so frustration, even feeling frustrated by non-pain threats in your life, you're frustrated by your job, you're frustrated by yourself, you're criticizing yourself, that puts the brain on high alert too. So it's not only being frustrated by the pain, it's being frustrated by non-pain threats. If you're buying into this idea that your life is more difficult than it is on such minute things, then that's going to send the brain into high alert. I use this example all the time, talking about how I would be at the grocery store, standing in line at the checkout, and I'd get really frustrated that, oh, I should have chosen the other line because it's moving faster. And now I'm being hard on myself and getting irritable. And then if we think about it logically, am I in a rush? Is it okay to be 1 minute late? So that idea of being frustrated about something that really is, in the grand scheme of things, kind of insignificant, was putting my brain on high alert. And now in hindsight, I can look back and say, oh, I actually had more higher levels of back pain in those moments. I remember always standing in line at the checkout, feeling more tension in my body, feeling more back pain. And now when I look back, oh my goodness, it's really associated with sort of this fear-based thinking that I was stuck in, and stuck in frustration. So if you're noticing frustration, we want to validate it and say, okay, I'm frustrated. But we don't need to buy into it, and we don't need to stay there. We can say, okay, moving on now. I don't have to add.
What about expressing it? Because I hear the repression type of stuff with some of these emotions coming up, and I do have wondered. It's like I want to allow it to be here. I don't want to dismiss it. That was a big pain for me growing up, is being dismissed when I'm emotional. And so, how do we let it be there without letting it take over, and without trying to make it go away? Seems like you're walking a line there.
Yeah, we want to validate any emotions. We don't want to be repressing emotions, because that's exactly how symptoms get expressed when we're repressing emotions. So if you feel, some anger towards somebody or resentment, sometimes that we do have to come to grips with and come to terms with that's how we're feeling. We don't necessarily have to express that to somebody else in order to heal. You can do some deep emotional work on yourself without having to heal that relationship with that person. They might be no longer living with us or something like that too, right?
Sure.
But in terms of you know the pain itself, when we're more frustrated with the pain, that's just going to further upregulate the nervous system. So
Is
yeah,
that kind of like adding the second fear to it? So you're adding frustration to the pain? Is that
exactly. Yeah, that would be like a second fear. But I see what you're saying. Absolutely. If you're feeling, frustration from, we always want to be feeling our emotions, and we can do that in so many different ways using different mind body tools. But it's more about allowing those emotions and feeling them on a somatic level. And but then we don't need to stay there, right? We don't need to kind of get stuck and dwell and kind of build further resentment. We just want to bring self-compassion to those emotions and change our relationship to those emotions and validate those emotions so that they can be let go of. So if we're feeling frustrated, we could say, I see you're feeling frustrated. We recognize, we bring mindfulness is always the first step. We bring mindfulness to what is, and we say, okay, this must be really hard for you. And we bring self-compassion to that, but we don't need to buy into it and stay there any longer than we need to. Yeah. And so the next two F's are the ones that you've mentioned, the fixing and the figuring out. And so fixing could be, let's just say you didn't know about mind body medicine and you were fixing yourself by going to a physical therapist, getting a massage. I used to use this tennis ball or lacrosse ball, and I would rub it into my joints, like rub it into my hip and shoulder every day, all day long. It was like an addiction. And if I wasn't getting that relief and that sort of, trigger point release,
Mhm.
I would feel anxiety. And so that was a fixing modality. My brain then thought that I needed to do this thing to fix my shoulder or to fix my hip. And that never solved the pain. Maybe temporarily, a fixing modality can kind of give you some relief, whether that's like an ice pack or a heating pack, but that's not going to be the cure to your chronic pain
Mhm.
because, when we're trying to fix the body with a physical modality, you're sending mixed messages to your brain. You're communicating to the brain that there must be something structurally wrong with you. Why would you be putting an ice pack on a physical symptom that's actually caused by your brain and nervous system, thinking that there's a psychological emotional threat? So if we continue to, behave as if we're treating something structurally, the brain's going to think that we're broken still. If
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to ice my hip, then I'm believing that I'm injured. So, I had to give up those physical modalities as if I were to be giving up smoking, which
Yeah.
I've also done. It's like you got to not feed the brain that nicotine, and eventually, it's the brain's going to say, "Give me that cigarette, give me." But the nicotine receptors will eventually, give up. And so the same is true with the brain and those fixing modalities.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like what I learned from Simona too, and that I've experienced is like soothing, soothing, trying to fix anything ultimately keeps us stuck. And like I learned so many tactics to through building capacity and learning to be with sensation. And it seems like the resources are certainly helpful when we're dysregulated and can help us soothe. And ultimately, we have to see that this is kind of keeping us stuck, and we got to let go. And that's a tough one. If you feel like you're doing something good for your body and seeing that, hey, the good thing that you think you're doing is actually the thing that's keeping you stuck, that's kind of a mind fuck. You're right. It's like,
Yeah.
it's so, that's why I say, I told Irene Lyon, doing this trauma work, this nervous system, brain retraining stuff, it's like the ultimate red pill. And you wake up and you see what's going on with your life and what's going on in your family life and what's going on with society. And we learn that it's ass backwards. And we kind of got to go down the rabbit hole of forgiveness and love and allowing and accepting. And that is just not what society is doing. It's put a band-aid on it. Take this pill, go
Yeah.
see this thing, crack it, rack it, and crack it. Um,
Such a
and
quick fix.
well, let me ask you this too.
Yeah.
Is that to get us out of sensitization? And is there a point where you're like, yeah, I'll go get a massage? Because I get in this modality of if I have symptoms, I notice myself going to fix it, and I'm typically like, don't do that right now, and that is what helps. But
Yep.
does there come a point, kind of like we don't follow the compulsions in the beginning of sensitization? Maybe the compulsion is to fix it, but is there a place where we can start to respond to those impulses again in a healthy way?
Hmm. Like, are you asking, could you go to a massage again once you're out of chronic
Yeah,
pain?
yeah, that's kinda what I'm asking, like, now, are you able to enjoy that? Or are you like, not good for me?"
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, to be transparent, I'll go for a massage once a year, if
Yeah.
that, just for pleasure and relaxation of the nervous system. Now, if I were to have a symptom popping up, of course, it would be short-lived, a neuroplastic sensation. The longest flare I've had in the past 2 or 3 years was 8 days of back pain, in terms of my original pain. But I've been in situations before where I'm fully bought into this idea that my pain is neuroplastic, and said I'm just going to go for a massage and tell them that I don't have pain. Meanwhile, I did have pain, and so again, I'm reinforcing
Yeah.
this message.
You're kind of
I
a
want
sneaky at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would tell the practitioner, I'm just here for nervous system regulation. Now, it might have felt good in the moment, but again, we're fooling ourselves to think that we need to do this to fix the pain, because the ultimate thing that needs to be rewired is your belief system and your subconscious programming that thinks that you need this pain, and changing those neural circuits, unlearning that pain, and then it can go away. Um,
This reaching for something outside of ourselves means reach inside. It means your insides, your little parts, your younger self, your wounds. They need you so much. Like today, I was telling you, I had a little bit of a freeze stuff yesterday. Coming out of that today, I'm like, oh, I'll take some. Had some brain fog this morning, and I'm like, I'll take some methylene blue, or I'll do, this or that to get my brain right. And I'm like, ah, and that's another thing from Simona, that when that comes up, trust, that's the next thing. That's the next thing to work with. And so we kind of move from this place, and this may sound crazy to someone that's listening that's in it. It would have sounded crazy to me 6 months ago, but it's like we go from this place of, oh shit, the pain is back, until, oh shit, the pain's back. Like the pathway in my brain is open. I'm able to work with this and meet this, and what's on the other side of this healing, because it's gonna be more capacity.
wow.
That's a huge switch for people to make, and I didn't understand it until recently.
Yeah, that's what we would call a corrective experience, right? If you're able to reappraise what's happening to you as not being a problem, even though it's uncomfortable and you don't want it, you're teaching yourself from it, and you're understanding that it's just information. This sensation and whatever it is that's happening in your body is just information. It's not to be feared. And I love what you said about, like, that notion of trying to you felt like the need that you needed to try some sort of physical modality to help yourself, and just that questioning of things is figuring it out, right? And that's the sixth F, is trying to figure it out, whether it's trying to figure out what's structurally wrong with you, or now that we know about neuroplastic symptoms that are psychologically, emotionally rooted, people are trying to figure out their trauma, or they're trying to figure out what's emotionally wrong with them. And that can put the brain on high alert when we keep trying to think like, I got to find that one thing. Quite often it's not. It's just a sort of a built up in your system over time of how your brain is operating to your current environment based on what it's been programmed by from the past. And so this idea of figuring out is it's often hidden in there, right? Because even just not wanting the pain is enough to cause dysregulation, upregulate the nervous system. Is just figuring out is just another form of fear. It's just completely masked. Yeah. And then the very last one, the seventh F that I gave to Dr. Schubiner to use, I think he might be putting it in his new book. We'll see next year. So it's feeling forlorn. So if you're feeling forlorn, you're feeling hopeless and helpless, that is sending a message of threat to your brain and nervous system. If you believe that you're never going to get better, if you're hopeless and you don't think you'll ever get better, you wake up every day and another one of these days, and you're kind of thinking, it's going to be a bad day. If you believe it's going to be a bad day, it's going to be a bad day. We have to start looking for those glimmers. We have to start looking for the hope. We have to start looking for the exception to the rule of those prediction errors to see, wait a minute, I bent over and it didn't hurt that time. My brain is capable of change, even if it's small, even if you oftentimes, a lot of clients of mine, or even myself, I would wake up and for that first 5 seconds, I wouldn't experience pain. And then as soon as you put your feet on the ground, symptoms are back.
Oh yeah.
Well, in that, even though it might seem small, in that 5 seconds, that's what we're looking for. We want to train the brain to see that we can rely on hope and optimism as a mechanism to fight this sort of notion that we are stuck, or that we're feeling forlorn, that we're really unrescuable. We're the ones that are going to get ourselves out of this. So if we're buying into this delusion, of course, it's a natural response to, again, all of these Fs are natural responses to pain or symptoms or sensations. But we then get to choose our new response. I don't have to be, even though it's natural to feel depressed and feel forlorn, I don't have to be as depressed or forlorn. It's a spectrum. Can I feel a little more optimistic? Can I feel like I'm going to heal? And look for the evidence of that. Because again, through neuroplasticity, we can absolutely change the brain. We can unlearn those neural pathways. Even when things seem so desperate, oh my goodness, I never could have imagined that it would have worked for me lying on the floor like that. How could I? And of course I'm going to feel depressed, not working and lying on the floor and feeling like nobody could tell me what was wrong with me, feeling like I was going to live with this for the rest of my life. it just feels like doomsday. But recognizing, whoa, it's my thinking that is perpetuating that. If I keep on thinking that I'm never going to get out of this, then that's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Amen, brother. I know we're getting short on time, and I really just want to say thank you so much for sharing your journey. I imagine, and we'll do a round two, because I imagine you and I could keep going on and on. And
Yes.
I tell all of my clients, I'm a big believer in find someone out there that's been through what you've been through, and get in their back pocket, learn as much as you can. And so I imagine people are watching, and they're like, they're hearing all of these things to look out for, and maybe thinking like, oh my gosh, this is me. And so I want to encourage those people to reach out to Scotty, to check his got a big following on social media. The handle is, if I can find it, How to Heal Chronic Pain. Real easy.
Exactly. How to heal chronic pain. Yeah.
Just tell us, for the people that are interested, where can they find you, and how do they work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so my main sort of little hangout is on Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook and TikTok, and trying to get some more stuff up on YouTube. But everywhere online, just put in how to heal chronic pain. And my name's Scotty Stiles. And yeah, if people are wanting to connect and they're feeling inspired and they want some support on their journey, and to see maybe there's some limiting beliefs, maybe there are things that they're not fully looking at, and not one person's nervous system is the same as others. And so every single client of mine is completely different. But, the same root cause is generally the same for everyone. It's this sort of mind-body disconnection, and we want to find the reasons why. And so
Without trying to figure it out.
without trying to figure it out. Yeah. Yeah. We're trying things on, right? It's like
Yeah.
we're trying on different hats. It's like, let's just see, it's a little bit of experimentation that we can do. And just like you, like I'm so inspired by this world, because there's so many different angles to look at things. And so that's kind of what I like to, what I bring to the table, is that I've kind of studied so many different nooks and crannies of this, the healing world. And I love to just, explore that with different clients, because we don't know what can work for somebody, and what's going to make their brain feel safe enough to turn off that neural circuit to regulate their nervous system, so that those learned neural circuits, or maybe there's repressed emotions, whatever is causing that symptom. We don't necessarily know until we get in there and find out. So yeah, so people can reach out to me. They can shoot me a DM. I offer free 30-minute discovery calls for people that are confident that they want some support. And of course, I offer lots of free resources online. I'll do, some Ask Me Anythings, and share different success stories and testimonials from other clients of mine too.
Beautiful, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey, and giving us so much information that can help so many people. And if anybody's resonating with this, definitely reach out to Scotty. We'll get him on for a round two. Any last closing arguments before you hop off?
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, I appreciate being here today. This has been so fun. Oh my goodness, I wish we could have another hour. But again, like you said, let's try this another time, and we'll add some more. This is just an endless conversation. But to sum it all up, I would just encourage people to realize that healing is possible. It's just as simple as that. We can heal a broken bone. Well, if that can heal, so can this type of chronic pain. We just have to understand what the mechanism is, and the solution is out there, and you are the solution.
Yes, you are the medicine, and not managing, fixing, or maybe we shouldn't say fixing. Maybe we should say getting rid of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Doc, coming on, brother. And yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitch.